Okay, hello everyone. Clarke Towson here. I'm the CEO of INTJ Billing. Might have seen the excitement over the last day or so here in Australia. The price of Bitcoin has surpassed the $100,000 mark. I'm currently looking at the price now, and it is $103,929 per Bitcoin. So the day that has been prophesized has arrived. All right, so very exciting day. Now, the video that I'd like to talk about today, this video, what I've done some work which I haven't been able to find anywhere else in the Australian media. Now, there's reasons, of course, why this type of work is so difficult to find, and that is because the government, the banks, and the media really don't want the general public to know this type of stuff. Now, those of you who know me well know that I'm not some kind of crazy conspiracy theorist. In fact, I'm very wary of conspiracies in general, and I get sent quite a few conspiracy theories from a number of my subscribers and a number of fans and friends of mine. But I'm a scientist, and I just want to concentrate on the facts. So this video is about the facts, and it's about this page that I've created on the INTJ Billing public website. And the page is about Bitcoin versus the Australian dollar and Australian property. So let's get into it. So here's the page here. As you can see at the top of the page here, I've got this graph. This is taken from Google. Now, I do apologize for some of the roughness of this page. It will be improved over time. Okay, I'm going to make it a lot more interactive, in fact. But what you see, this is a screenshot of the Australian dollar versus Bitcoin. And as you can see, the price of the Australian dollar, or the value of the Australian dollar, has been dropping, okay, over a number of years in a rather extreme manner when compared to Bitcoin. In fact, the Australian dollar is down 99.52% against Bitcoin, which is, it's not just kind of shocking, it's shocking. And if you think about it, this should be front page news, but it's not, right? So yeah, this page here, I just want to get a little bit into this because I think it's important. So the Australian dollar, it's plummeted when measured against Bitcoin. It's not front page news. It should be front page news. And of course, the reason why it's dropped so much, just like all other fiat currencies, is because fiat currencies can be printed in unlimited quantities. And paper money always returns to its intrinsic value over time, which is zero. All right? So the value of fiat currency is constantly being eaten away by the effects of inflation and money printing by the banks and the Australian government. Now, when we think about Bitcoin, all right, if we compare Bitcoin with fiat currencies, Bitcoin is a decentralized digital currency which is fixed in supply and is the best store of value compared to every other asset on earth, and is a highly effective hedge against inflation. So the Australian dollar, like every other fiat currency, will continue to be inflated away due to money printing by the banks and the government. And Bitcoin's extreme scarcity is a key factor in its value appreciation. So unlike fiat currencies that can be printed away, Bitcoin has a limited supply capped at 21 million coins. And this scarcity is built into the protocol and will not change. So this ensures that Bitcoin can't be inflated away like the Australian dollar and every other traditional fiat currency. We're not going to see this pattern with Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin's decentralized nature provides a level of security and trust that fiat currencies lack. So, Bitcoin's got no central authority controlling it. It's completely immune to government manipulation and interference. And this independence from government and the banks is very appealing particularly to investors, and especially in times of economic uncertainty, or where there are concerns about inflation and currency devaluation. Bitcoin's growing adoption and acceptance as a form of payment via the Lightning Network. Remember, we're still in very early days with the Lightning Network. There's continued adoption, and by people and institutions for investment, further support its continued value appreciation. And as more individuals and institutions hone in on Bitcoin's beacon and recognize the benefits of Bitcoin, its demand, and thus its value, will increase, and increase significantly in the years and the decades ahead. But the Australian dollar here will continue to face challenges due to inflation, money printing by the banks and the government. These actions will erode the purchasing power of the Aussie dollar over time, making it less attractive as a store of value. One might argue that it's never been a store of value, right? Bitcoin's scarcity, decentralization, and increasing global adoption make it not just compelling as an alternative, but a necessity, right? It's a necessary alternative to fiat currencies like the Aussie dollar. Right? Bitcoin's unique properties position it as a fantastic hedge against these risks, with its value continuing to increase relative to the Aussie dollar and every other fiat currency out there. Now, thinking about Australian property prices, okay, I've got this table here. This table is from the Australian Bureau of Statistics. It's residential property price indexes, 8 capital cities, and it goes up to December 2021. I haven't been able to find the data from 2022 to 2024. I'm hoping that I do find that data. Once I have that data, I will put it into the table. But as you can see with the table here, we've got the various cities in Australia. Okay, and then we've got the weighted average of the cities and the compound yearly return of property for each city. So as you can see here, here's the compound yearly return, and underneath we've got the total compound return over the last 10 years. So we can see that it's about 85%, right? Weighted average of all capital cities. Okay. Got a graph here, and this too has been taken from the Australian Bureau of Statistics. Now underneath, we've got my table. So what I've done, I've combined the ABS data with the price of Bitcoin. Okay, so what I've done is I've taken the price of Bitcoin on each of the dates, okay, that the ABS has created for their house price index table, and I've placed the price of Bitcoin next to it. Okay, now we've got a bit of a typo here. This figure is incorrect. I'll update that. I'll fix this. This is a work in progress. But here are the prices of Bitcoin against residential property prices. Underneath that table, I've got another table. And so I've got, again, the ABS data. I've got the price of Bitcoin as of those dates. And I've got the number of Bitcoin required to buy a house in Sydney and in Melbourne. And as you can see, over time, the number of Bitcoin has reduced considerably, i.e., in other words, it's taken less and less Bitcoin in order to purchase a house in Sydney and Melbourne, and in fact in all the capital cities of Australia. So I've got this graph here, okay. How much Bitcoin did it cost to buy a Sydney and Melbourne median priced house by year from the years 2011 to 2020? And as you can see, in 2011, it would have cost 174,183 Bitcoin to purchase a median price Sydney house. Right? So this is the number of Bitcoin down the y-axis, and 161,765 Bitcoin to purchase a median price Melbourne house. So on the x-axis along here, 2011, okay, so we've got the years, right, and the particular months from the ABS data. where they plotted the house price indexes. And you can see it's been a drop, a huge drop, a crash, right? This is a crash where, because the value of Bitcoin has gone up so much relative to all other assets out there, and in particular relative to property, we can see that over time, okay, it's taken less and less Bitcoin to buy the median Sydney and Melbourne house. And by 2020, it cost just 82 Bitcoin in Sydney and 61 Bitcoin in Melbourne to buy a median price property. And when I look at this with the updated data, so latest figures as of literally yesterday, in Sydney, 11.38 Bitcoin, and Melbourne, 9.32 Bitcoin. So a massive crash in property values relative to Bitcoin over the past 13 years. Underneath this graph, we've got another graph, and this is the Australian Property Price Index versus Bitcoin prices 2011 to December 2021. And you can see, so this is the ABS data again, and the ABS, and I've created this graph out of the ABS data of the residential property prices for each city in Australia. And you can see, so this is the index value. It started off at an index value of 100, and as you can see, the index has risen to about 200 for various cities. Some cities have lagged significantly behind, including Darwin and Perth. But against this, I've also plotted the price of Bitcoin, and as you can see over that time frame, Bitcoin, it's like a rocket ship, right? Rocket ship up. So the Bitcoin price has behaved very differently to residential property prices. There's been a slower increase in property price values in comparison to Bitcoin. Now, underneath this graph, I've created this table with the Bitcoin compound yearly return, which has been just over 100%, 107.88% per year from 2013 to 2021, and the total compound return, 34,779%. Underneath that, we've got the Australian property prices compound yearly return, has been 6.35%, and the total compound return, 85.01%. Right? So we've got a massive difference. Look, I do apologise that the years aren't exactly the same, but I've done the best that I could with the data that I have. Right? Once again, this is data from the ABS, and the Bitcoin data is courtesy of CoinGecko. Got a typo in there, I'll fix that. All right. So you can see here, Melbourne median house price 2017, $865,712. And the total Bitcoin this would have purchased, so you could have purchased 346 Bitcoin instead of buying the house, right? So that amount of money would have purchased this amount of Bitcoin in early 2017. Now, what if somebody decided to buy Bitcoin instead of a house? Well, that Bitcoin would be worth almost $33 million versus the house, which is worth just over $1 million. So the total money gained by buying Bitcoin instead of a house has been almost $32 million, which is extraordinary. It's amazing. Yet it's not talked about in the media. It's not front page news, okay? When it should be front page news, right? Question is, you've got to ask yourself, why is it not front page news? So just remember, discuss the reasons why. It really does make you think, right? So Bitcoin has absolutely smashed the returns that Australian property has generated, and in my opinion, will continue to do so. Right? And the table highlights it clearly. Now, Australian property has been a long-standing and much-loved investment choice by Australians due to its historical increase in value over time. Owning property is the great Australian dream. The market has shown remarkable growth, especially in Sydney and Melbourne. One of the key factors driving this increase is the limited supply of land for development, particularly in desirable locations. As populations increase due to high immigration levels and urbanisation continues, the demand for Australian property has risen significantly, leading to higher prices. Compounded, of course, by the banks loaning ever greater amounts of money to people relative to their incomes for mortgages. Of course, additional factors like smart growth policies and heritage protection and overlay policies heavily restrict development in most inner and middle suburbs. My family are an example of this. We own inner city property in Port Melbourne. This is family property that's been passed down multiple generations. It was purchased at a time when Port Melbourne was a poor area, and it's been transformed from a poorer area to one of the wealthiest suburbs in Melbourne, right? A property, however, is a variable asset. Okay, I want you to think about that. You might not have heard that term before, variable asset. I want to bring that term into the lexicon. And it's a variable asset because more property can be created in response to increased demand. Developers can, and they do, build new properties like apartments to meet the rising demand. Now, the supply of property is not fixed and can be adjusted to a large extent in response to market conditions. One need only look at the urban sprawl of cities like Melbourne, for example, to see that there is a large amount of new development going on. And in addition, brownfield sites and former industrial properties, like many locations in suburbs like my hometown, Port Melbourne, have been redeveloped into luxury housing and apartments. Now, recent Victorian state government changes allow 3-storey high apartment developments within the middle suburbs. And we'll soon see the face of the suburbs change significantly due to these new rules on infill development. Now, on the other hand, Bitcoin is a unique and unprecedented asset in that it has a fixed and not a variable supply. A fixed supply, right? This is the first time in the history of the world where we've had an asset that has got a fixed supply. There will only ever be 21 million Bitcoins in existence, making it the world's only monetary asset, right? The world's only monetary asset, the only monetary asset that is an investable asset, right? In terms when you compare it to altcoins, for example, right? So it's the world's only monetary asset with a fixed supply that can't be increased over time in response to an increase in demand. Now, this fixed supply is enforced by the Bitcoin protocol. It's one of the key features that sets Bitcoin apart from traditional fiat currencies and every other asset on earth. Now, no government, or anyone else for that matter, can mess with the rules of the Bitcoin protocol. As we know, government is forever meddling in the housing market, which makes housing a highly political investment, which is subject to whatever changes the Australian government wants to make and whatever new policies they want to implement, which greatly messes with housing's supply and demand ratio and hence its value. Now, it's very interesting to think about this. All housing is local, but Bitcoin is a global monetary asset on the world stage, right? Bitcoin's supply is further constrained by the block reward halving that occurs approximately every 4 years. Now, as you know, we've got a block reward halving event coming up, okay, in April, not long to go now, right, where the supply of Bitcoin that's awarded to the miners, 6.25 Bitcoin, gets reduced, okay? 6.5 Bitcoin down to 3.25 Bitcoin, right? So we've got that halving, and that occurs every 4 years, reducing the supply even further. So this event reduces the rate at which new Bitcoins are created, effectively decreasing the rate of supply growth. Now, as demand for Bitcoin continues to increase, driven by factors such as its store of value properties, growing acceptance, and adoption, the decreasing supply growth will lead to further price appreciation. Now, Australian property and Bitcoin represents contrasting approaches to supply dynamics in response to changes in demand. While property can be created to meet increasing demand, Bitcoin's fixed supply and decreasing supply growth due to halving events make it a unique and valuable asset in the long term. Right? A unique and valuable asset, an unprecedented, unique and valuable asset in the long term. The world's never had an asset that's fixed in supply before. Right? So yeah, I just thought that I'd run you through this page. As I said, I am going to improve it over time. Okay, I want to make it more interactive. Okay, I want to add it so that you can enter whatever fiat currency in here, and you can see the drop in value against Bitcoin. I want to update the table so it's completely up to date. But I think if the Australian media is not going to report upon this, then we need someone like myself, a fringe dweller essentially, to report upon it. Okay, it's not in the best interest of the banks, the media, the government to report upon stuff. And remember, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm a computer scientist who's looking at the facts. I think that this data is very important. I think the comparison is very important because remember, we've all got the same problem, which is how do we store our value over time? Right? My family uses property to store value over time. Now, there are problems with property. There are advantages and there are disadvantages. Right? My generation, I've been the first in the family to go to university. I'm the first in the family to set up a family office, okay, as well. I've been running a family office since around 2015. All right? And it's my generation who's going to move the family forward, okay, from the working class roots to the creation of the family office to the formation of Towson Capital, right? So this is the thing. I think it's important that this data be reported on. I think it's important that people know that this is the reality, that over time, you need less and less Bitcoin to purchase a house. So one is better off saving and investing in Bitcoin rather than buying the house, or saving and investing in Bitcoin until such time as you've got enough Bitcoin to then buy a house, remembering, however, that selling your Bitcoin to buy the house over time, your Bitcoin will increase at greater rates than the house, and you would have been better off just holding the Bitcoin and not buying the house. But us Australians, we love property, right? We love to invest in property. It is the great Australian dream. And I think it's important to have some balance in one's life. I have a very unbalanced life myself, given the stuff that I'm doing over in Thailand with Bitcoin. But for the average person out there, in the general public, they want to buy a property, they want to invest in property, they want to increase their savings so that they can buy a property. And my family, myself and my brother, have recently done an enormous amount of work fixing up family-owned properties. We had to sell some Bitcoin to do it, right? And that was within the last year. Had we held on to the Bitcoin that we had to sell to invest in the properties, right, to fix them up, to put them back on the rental market, we would have more money, right? But we had to go through and we had to do this. The older generation is not ready for a lot of this information. And it's interesting that I actually added up. All right, so in my family, we've got the family matriarch, which is my mother. She's in her late 70s now. I went to her in early 2017 and I said, look, Mum, I want you to invest in Bitcoin. Okay, I'm investing in Bitcoin. I sat my entire family down. I wasn't able to convince my mother to make the large investment. I was able to convince her to make a smaller investment. She's very happy that she made that investment. But I did the sums, and by not making the larger investment that I wanted her to make, well, let's put it this way. our family would have been worth between $75 million to $100 million. But I wasn't able to convince her. I wasn't able to get her over the line. And if you think about it, it is risky, right, for older family members who are unable to go back into the workforce or anything like that. So there was no pressure there, anything like that. Right? Well, we're happy with the result that we achieved. But with Bitcoin, remember, we were right early, but the rest of society just wasn't at that stage yet. And that's what created this enormous opportunity, right? Sometimes you can be early to something and you can see things that the average person doesn't see, and it's going to take time for the average person, the general public, to be able to see what you see. All right, that's it from me for today, everyone. All the best. I'm Clarke Towson, CEO of INTJ Billing.